What's going on, y'all? We got the most overrated fighters in all of the UFC. We're going to go one per division. And just because I'm saying they're overrated does not mean I think that they're bad. I'm not saying they're a can. I just think either the MMA community overrates them or maybe even they get overglazed by their own fans. But let's get into it, starting off first with Flyweight. And no, I'm not saying this because he lost to Muhammad Mokaev. I've been saying this for a while now. Manel Kape is severely overrated. Obviously, this man has good striking. He's got good power in his hands. But he can't really compete with the best flyweights, and we've seen that. He was out-wrestled by Mokaev, which is not really a bad thing, but he has 2 losses early in his career, I think, by maybe Nicolau, and then I know he lost to Pantoja. But if you can mix it up against Manel Kape, you're going to win the fight. Obviously, you don't want to stand with this man for too long because he has the power to put your lights out. But he's just not that good of a fighter. He does not have championship material in him, at least in my personal opinion. I don't think he beats a Steve Erceg. I don't think he beats Kaikar France. I don't think he beats Pantoja. I don't think he beats the top of the division. He doesn't beat Albazi. I mean, a lot of people think this guy is a future champion. I just don't see it. I think he's severely overrated. Obviously, he has the power, and I think that's really all he has. His wrestling does not impress me. His jiu-jitsu does not impress me. Even his cardio doesn't impress me. I just think Manel Kape is overrated. Don't think he's championship material. I think he'll stay around the top 5, top 7 for the rest of his career. I don't see him going anywhere past that, I'm going to be honest. Let's move on to Bantamweight. This one's pretty obvious. Chito Vera. Chito Vera is the most overrated bantamweight. He looks a little hefty in this photo also. Obviously, he added on some extra pounds going into the Figgy fight to try to keep him from wrestling, and it didn't really work. Chito Vera, only thing he has going for him really is his durability. I know he's a great striker. He's always dangerous, but he's not really putting guys away like the public thinks he is. Come from behind knockout against Dominic Cruz, and people like to show that highlight everywhere. But if you mix it up against Chito Vera, kind of like Manel Kape, you're probably going to win the fight. And then on top of that, he's not an elite striker. We saw him against Sean O'Malley, who is one of the best strikers in all of the UFC. He put on a masterclass. He 50-45 Chito Vera solely on the feet. So Chito's really not an elite striker. He's not an elite grappler. He's not an elite wrestler. So he's kind of mid. Again, this is another situation where he does not beat anybody in the top 5, maybe even 6 or 7. We saw him get beat by, I think, number 7, Figueiredo. But at this point, everybody kind of knows how good Chito Vera is. There's not really another option in that bantamweight division. But Chito still, I think he's still ranked too high. I think he should be borderline top 10 guy, maybe 9, 10, somewhere around there. But if this man did not have his durability and toughness, like this man's unfinishable, I'm not going to lie. If he did not have that going for him, he might not even be ranked. I mean, he'd be in the 10 to 15 range somewhere, but Chito Vera is just not that good. We saw him take the best shots from Sean O'Malley. He took a nasty knee to the jaw, just ate it, didn't really care. So obviously this man is tough as nails. He's unsubmittable. He's unknockoutable, if that's how you even say that. But I don't think his toughness can drive him to the top 5. He's not beating any of those guys. He's not beating Jan. Obviously not Figgy, not O'Malley. He's not beating a Cejudo. He's probably not even beating a Song Yadong at this point. And we saw what happened when he fought Corey Sandhagen. And this guy's getting killed by Umar Nurmagomedov. So he's just not a title contender. I'm going to be honest. Everybody kind of knows where Chito Vera's at, but I think he's still a little bit overrated. But let's move on to the featherweight division. This one hurts me to say, but it's Diego Lopes. It is definitely Diego Lopes. This man has insane aura, a bunch of hype around him. I just don't know how good this man really is. I mean, a lot of people are acting like he's going to go in there and compete for a title and possibly beat Ilia Topuria. I don't see that. I don't see anywhere where that happens. He's got a very tough test coming up with Brian Ortega, which will reveal a lot about this man. He looked good. He knocked out Sadiq Youssef in the first round. I think he knocked out Gavin Tucker. Was that who it was in the first round? And then he went to a decision with Dan Ige. Looked good in the beginning, and then his cardio was a little bit questionable. But again, I'm not saying Diego Lopes is a bad fighter. I think he still is one of the best featherweights on the planet. But I think he's getting a little bit overhyped. People are buying into the aura, myself included. Diego Lopes is very wild on the feet, which has carried him to some knockout victories in the past. He's got some nasty power in his hands. But when he faces a crisp, sharp striker like a Ilia Topuria, like a Volkanovski, like a Max Holloway, I think he's going to get beat up. And I think he's going to get beat up bad. It does help him, though, with his submission threat. He's got a nasty ground game. He's always throwing up submissions off of his back. But again, that cardio was a little bit questionable. I know it was short notice, but still. We got to see how he does against Brian Ortega. If he wins that fight, I might change my mind about Diego Lopes, but we'll have to see. Moving on to the lightweight division. Some people might not like this one, but I've got Justin Gaethje. I've been saying this for a while. I'm not saying that because he got knocked out and pieced up by Max Holloway. I just don't think Justin Gaethje is as good as people make him out to be. I've seen a lot of people say that he's the best striker in that lightweight division. I just don't see that. I think he gets outstroked by Islam, and I think Dustin Poirier beats him probably 7 out of 10 times. The head kick he landed was beautiful in that BMF title fight, not taking anything away from that. I still would say Dustin Poirier is a better fighter than Justin Gaethje. Even at this point in Dustin's career, I would pick him to beat Gaethje, like I said, about 7 times out of 10. Again, not saying Gaethje is a bad fighter, not saying he's a bad striker. He's a great striker. He's a great fighter. There's zero chance he beats Islam. I don't think he would beat Dustin in a rematch. He obviously can't beat Max Holloway. He's not beating Charles Oliveira in a rematch. He's not beating Arman Sarukian. Even a guy like Dan Hooker would be a tough fight. I would pick Gaethje to win that fight. I'm not buying into the recency bias on Dan Hooker. Love the man, but he's not that good. I think Gaethje would probably destroy him. Hooker's one of those guys that relies on toughness a little bit. But Gaethje is still a top 5 contender. He's always around that 5 spot, or he should be. Even against a guy like Benoit Saint Denis, I think he gives Justin Gaethje a lot of trouble. I think he could even finish him on the ground. We saw him kind of dominate Dustin Poirier in the beginning of that fight, but couldn't find the finish. I think he could finish a guy like Justin Gaethje. Again, I'm not trying to just compare him to Dustin Poirier, but I think DP is just a much better fighter than Gaethje. I don't think that's crazy to say. But anyway, I still love this man. Would love to see him fight for a title. I'm always rooting for Justin Gaethje, but I think he's a little bit overrated. Let's move on to the welterweight division. We've got Colby Covington. I know this man looked really bad in his last performance, which part of that was due to injury. I think he had a broken foot. But still, I just don't think Colby Covington is the same fighter. And honestly, I really don't think Colby Covington was ever that good. I know he competed for a title twice against Usman. He had an interim title. But still, I don't think Colby beats the current champion in Bilal Muhammad. I don't think he beats any of the past champions. I feel like he's the type of guy that will beat up all the lower-ranked contenders, will have trouble with the higher-ranked guys, and will never win a belt. This man's got underrated striking, phenomenal wrestling, and absolutely zero finishing ability. We all know Colby Covington for his trash talk. He plays a great character. We all want to see Colby Covington fight, whether you love him, whether you hate him. But I just don't think he's really that good. I mean, you can look at it right there. He's got 17 wins on the record, 8 of them coming by finish. A little less than 50%, and I'm sure most of those were before the UFC. I just don't think Colby Covington is that good. He's been overrated his whole entire career. I think he's degressing. He's openly ducking Ian Gary as well, which is a whole nother story. But I just don't know where Colby's at anymore. I don't think he beats a Shavkat. I don't know if he beats... He might be able to beat JDM. I don't think he beats Usman again. I don't even know if he beats a Charles Oliveira if Charles comes up. And then I would love to see him get smashed by Bilal Muhammad. But anyway, Colby Covington is still overrated. Let's move on to the 185ers, the middleweight division. This one was tough, but I went with Paulo Costa. I think Paulo Costa is still a little bit overrated. I think he's 1-4 in his last 5, something around there, 1-3 in his last 4. I can't remember the number. But for some reason, this man always gets put in big fights against really good contenders, and he always loses. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter, obviously. He looked really good against Robert Whittaker, in my opinion. Robert Whittaker's just on a whole nother level. But for whatever reason, this man always gets put in big fights. He always has a big name opponent against him, and he just never wins. He lost to Izzy, Whittaker, Strickland. He was even booked to fight Khamzat Chimaev, and we all know how that would have went. But I think some fans out there just still hold on to that hype that Paulo Costa had at the beginning of his career, which he looked unbeatable at the beginning. He's a mid-middleweight, I'm not going to lie. Then again, he's very entertaining. Everybody loves him. He's really fun to watch. But he's still overrated by the MMA community. He's a good fighter. He's a decent fighter. But I still think he's overrated. I thought about putting a guy like Adesanya here, but I think he looked great in his last fight with DDP. And there's some rumors coming out that he was even injured going into that fight, which is why he strayed away from the leg kicks. But let's move on to the light heavyweight division. This one was kind of tough too, but I went with Khalil Rountree. And no, I'm not just saying this because he got offered an undeserved title shot. I've been saying Khalil Rountree is a little bit overrated by the MMA community for a while now. He is a great fighter, don't get me wrong. He's on a 5-fight win streak for a reason. But are we really considering the win over Anthony Smith as a good win? And I know he destroyed him, but come on. But I know on paper Anthony Smith is one of the greatest fighters to ever do it. But let's not forget that Khalil Rountree got knocked out by Johnny Walker. And that loss has aged poorly. But I know that was pre-Thailand Rountree. He's a whole new fighter now, let's be real. But still, I've seen people saying that he's going to beat Alex Pereira. I've even seen Chael Sonnen say he's going to run through Alex Pereira. I think that statement is absolutely wild. If you haven't learned your lesson by now, no man on the planet can really stand with Alex Pereira in that light heavyweight division at least. We saw what happened to Yuri. We saw what happened to Jamal Hill. It just does not work out for you. And I think Khalil Rountree is going to go in there and try to do the same thing. He said he's never attempted to take down his career. Don't expect one from him this time. And I think he's going to get brutally KO'd, kind of like Jamal Hill. Now, maybe Khalil Rountree beats a guy like Jamal Hill, or even a fight with like a Carlos Ulberg would be so sick. I might lean Ulberg in that fight, though. I do like Khalil Rountree a lot, though. I think a lot of people kind of overrate him because of his story, because he's a great guy. He's got a phenomenal story. I don't think people really understand that the UFC is not some Cinderella story. We saw it. Dustin Poirier did not beat Islam like everybody hoped for. This is somewhat of a similar situation. It's not a Cinderella story. Khalil Rountree is not going to beat Poatan. But anyway, I think Khalil Rountree is a phenomenal fighter, very good fighter, but I think he's a little bit overrated by the MMA fans. Let's move on to that heavyweight division. This one was tough because the heavyweight division is so trash. But I think there's one or maybe two fighters you can argue that are overrated. But I picked Tom Aspinall. And before y'all get mad, Tom Aspinall is one of my favorite fighters in the entire UFC. But people are acting like Tom Aspinall just runs through John Jones low diff. I think that is one of the craziest statements I've seen this year. And to pick anybody to run through John Jones, I think is wild. I know John Jones looks a little bit different at heavyweight. He didn't look as comfortable on the feet against Cyril Gane. But it's still John Jones. John Jones is the baddest man on the planet. If you put John Jones in a room with somebody else, anybody else, John Jones comes out of that room. Sorry, y'all. My inner Dana White came out a little bit. I don't like John Jones. I'm a big Aspinall fan, and maybe he could beat John Jones. I think it'd be a great fight. It'd probably be the toughest test of Jones' career. But to say that Aspinall just wipes the floor with him is absurd. But I do like Tom Aspinall's potential. The whole world believes that this man's going to be the heavyweight GOAT, and I agree with that. He's levels above the other competition at heavyweight. He's a great striker, great wrestler, great grappler. He's got all the tools. I just think he's overrated because of the whole John Jones talks. But besides that, he's the best heavyweight on the planet by far. But that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Let me know what fighters I left off the list. But be sure to drop a like on the video, hit that subscribe button, and we out.